Hey everybody, this is Mark with Waistdeep Wade Fishing. It's finally time for our annual fishing report. This is the Wade Fishing Report for Southwest Florida. I'm going to give you some locations. I'm going to give you what to use, when to use it, and why to use it. So let's jump right into it. Let's get it started. It's very, very weird out right now. I don't really have words to describe it. I'm kind of guessing it's because of the heat. I mean, it's so hot that the regular patterns that the fish, are supposed to have, well, they're not. It's completely changed. I've kind of figured it out, but I wanted to bring it to every one of my viewers' attention on, what to do in this situation with this type of heat. You would think that because of the heat, well, these fish are going to be in the mangroves. Well, guess what? I'm fishing the mangroves and the fish aren't there. Also you would think because of this heat, well, first thing in the morning, all the fish would be feeding. Well, they're not. So let's go ahead and start this up. First of all, Sanibel grass flags. Fantastic. I started working this years ago. I finally got it down to almost a science for the trout. As far as the redfish and the snook, it's been a hit or a miss. Last year I seen snook all over the place there. This year I haven't seen one. Now it is the summertime and there's a lot of snook on the beaches. I'm not really wade fishing all the way out on that sandbar, so they could be on the bar. It's because the tides have been really weird. The water's coming in so deep I can't make it out to that sandbar. It's up to my chest and I'm not walking, that far out there. So I can't really give you a report on the snook, but I can give you a report on the trout. So let's begin. Sanibel grass flats, trout fishing, phenomenal. Because they closed trout season, no one's allowed to take trout. It's going on the second year and the trout population is exploding. On any given day, as long as you have moving water, and you fish the deep potholes on the low tide, fish, the grass flats, on the on the incoming tide, when it's low, get up on the grass, fish the potholes as usual as the tide's coming in. Once that tide comes in, fish near shore. Now, you're gonna have to explore because, if you go out to those grass flats, it's got, the contours of the ground are like this. There's some spots that are, a foot higher than others. And once you walk around and locate those drop-offs, when that tide is moving, those drop-offs are going to be the spots where the trout are going to feed. So go out there, look for those spots, explore, walk the flats, hit the grass again, hit the potholes, hit the drop-offs, make sure the water is moving. Those are the three key factors. There's bait all over the place, so you don't have to worry about that. Next is this type of baits that we're using. Obviously, if you watch the videos, in the morning, I'm using a bone sheep pup on the incoming tides, and I'm casting towards the sandbar and working that plug over the deeper potholes that I can't get to because it's too deep. And that's where I'm finding the big trout, the trout over 20 inches. The smaller trout on the moving tide, on the top of the incoming, beginning of the outgoing, start heading back towards shore, work the inner potholes, going against the tide. So in other words, if the tide is coming this way, you want to be standing this way, throwing your lure into the tide, and then bringing it back to you, whether it be outgoing or incoming. But preferably, you want to be fishing there on the first quarter of the incoming, the first quarter of the outgoing. Those happen to be the big times that I've been seeing the trout have been feeding very, very well. Now, of course, in the morning on the sun up, yes, and of course in the evening as the sun is going down. Those are also good times, but the water hasn't been moving at those times, so it hasn't been very productive. The most productive of them all has been during the mornings on the incoming tide. Get there on a low tide, work the incoming 2-3 hours, and call it a day. Next, let's go ahead and move on. Redfish. They have been at the Sanibel Flats, but they've only been there when the tide, when I could get there in the morning on the dead low. That's when I see that the redfish are actually feeding. So as the sun is coming up, you want a dead low tide, preferably a negative tide, and you want to work a gold spoon, a chartreuse, Rockport rattler, or Texas rattler with a white DOA cow, a chicken on the chain, oh my goodness, I forgot the name of it, saltwater assassin, and definitely a white aqua dream or a gold aqua dream spoon. Make sure you've got a swivel on the end of that. And that has been key for the redfish. And then of course, you know, I always like to put a little bit of Procure scent on all my lures. I use the crab and the mullet scent. Moving on to the next spot. So, Bokeelia, one of my favorite winter red fishing spots. Snook, snook, snook. The redfish are nowhere to be seen around there. I have not caught them, but the snook are there in drones and they are big. You want to get there on the middle of the incoming tide, okay? The last quarter of the incoming tide, and you want to walk out as far as you can, turn towards the shoreline, and start throwing plugs or swim baits on a jig head towards the shoreline in the first trough, through the smaller potholes, through the grass, and also on the mud flats. Again, I can't stress this enough. Walk out, turn towards the shore, throw your lures at the shore, working them back to you on the last quarter of the incoming tide. The trout have been there on the high tide, not as great as I would like to see them in that particular area, but if you're looking to catch snook, there's plenty of them. If a dolphin comes through there, you might as well wrap it up and call it a day, or keep on walking down past Jug Creek Shoals if you can get that far without sinking in the mud, and try to work that area. Redfish, you know, it's my favorite fish to catch, aside from the trout. They have seemed to move, but I'm going to give you the spot where they are. I haven't had a chance to go out there, but I did talk to about 5 different people that have been fishing the area in the last week, and they've been telling me it's fantastic. The redfish are everywhere. So what you want to do is you want to go to the Burn Store Flats, and it's the same principle. On the dead low tide, you're going to walk out, fish the potholes against the sandbars. The redfish will be feeding all through there. Gold spoons, top waters, preferably in white, chartreuse in chrome will work. I always use the she-dog. I never, leave I never leave my house without a she-dog in my bag. Gold spoon, Old Faithful, and of course an 1/8 or a 1/4 ounce jig head in chartreuse or white. You want to be throwing a darker color because that water is very, very muddy right now. So you want to look at a DOA cal in black, a DOA cal in New Penny. If you're looking to use a jerk shed, if you're working the grass and you're using jerk sheds, I would go in the 4-inch Z-Man Houdini jerk shed, and I would match that up to a 3/0 1/8 of an ounce Mustad grip pin. And again, work with the tides. First thing in the morning is always excellent. The heat of the day puts them all off. If you get out there on the evening and you are near the sandbar, please be careful. There are a lot of sharks around right now. It is summertime, and they like to hang around the sandbar. As far as snook, on the outside of the bar, there's few. Tarpon up and down that sandbar all day long, as the water is moving. You catch 2 or 3 coming up and getting a breath of air. If you see them out there and you happen to be on that bar on the low tide, throw towards them. They're not big in numbers there, but there are a few. Of course, jacks are always out there. Haven't seen much mackerel. On the inside of the bar, if you are on a low tide and you're working the first trough line, use the same principles. You want to throw a jig head, a swim bait, preferably in white, Any type of mirror lure, Miradine, Heavy-Dine sinking in silver and red, in green and silver, green and white, in bone, in the Mardi Gras color, also the pink, silver, and chartreuse works fine in the suspending Miradine line. But again, it's very, very hot outside, so the snook are not suspending, they're laying low to the floor, so you want something that's going to get down there. So if snook are what you're looking for, get out to that sandbar. If you're looking for the redfish, low tide, but not on the sandbar, facing towards the sandbar, around the surrounding potholes. Once the tide comes in, walk it up towards the shore, work all of the oyster bar. There's 5 different oyster bars that are out there. Walk up real quiet, cast towards the sandbars, gold spoon, 1/8 of an ounce jig head, 1/4 ounce jig head, depending on the current. And I want to use dark colors, new penny, black. You can throw a white if it's a little silty, but if it's real muddy, stick with the darker colors and experiment, see what works for you.